All right, ladies and gentlemen. So something happened today, and this something was very, very important. It was huge. It was huge for the overall space. And a lot of people have their opinions on it, which is perfectly fine. You're allowed to have your opinion on it. But I think that what happened here was a good thing for many different reasons. Obviously, you guys know I've always invited people who disagreed with me to have a conversation. Almost all of them say no, right? None, all of them say no, or they just don't answer, which is, again, whatever, perfectly fine. I come to expect it, right? Nick Calandra actually answered the call, shockingly, and went on Side Scrollers podcast. Now, I don't know if he went on Side Scrollers podcast because they are, I would assume, to be the safest place for Nick Calandra to go to, because they're very, they're very professional there for the most part. They don't really get too rowdy or anything like that. So he decided to go. And a lot of this had to do with Craig's new award show that he's trying to push. Now, I don't have an opinion on Craig's award show because honestly, I haven't looked into it enough. I always think it's cool if somebody tries to do something different. Whether it's successful or not, time will tell. But I don't have an opinion on it because I just haven't looked into it enough. So I'll look into it eventually, and eventually I'll have an opinion. But a lot of people were trying to say that this interaction was pointless, and I don't think it was pointless at all. And we're gonna break it down. We're gonna spend all night doing this, so don't worry. We're gonna break it down. But I don't think it was pointless at all because you know what? The conversation was had finally, right? And it was happening between two people who are on completely different ideological sides. And at the end of the day, I think it exposes a lot of the hypocrisy that Nick Calandra basically puts out there. I also think it's quite hilarious, his mannerisms, his overall demeanor, his posture, his the way that he speaks. It's not the tough guy that he puts out there on Twitter. It's definitely not. It's not the guy who's like, oh, if I was in a bar with you, I would fuck you up. Like, it's not that guy. Like, it's very clear that he's not that guy, which again, we already knew he wasn't that guy. But it just kind of confirms it. So let's get into this. Let's start reacting to this. Let's break it down. We got Blabs, we got Melanie Mac, we got Nick Calandra, and we got Craig. What could possibly go wrong?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Welcome back. It's been a few months since you've been on the show. How have you been?
Not too bad. Trying to, if I twitch a little bit, my neck is completely kinked up. So I maybe.
All right. Red flag number one. And I'm calling this out right away. Okay. This man clearly deals with some sort of anxiety or nervousness because he had an excuse for what he knew people were going to call him out on before he even started the show. This guy was like, hey, if you see me twitching and I'm looking around and I'm looking nervous, it's not you, it's my neck. It's my neck. I kinked my neck. Sure you did, bro.
A little bit. Not giving you guys the looks.
That's okay. Well, we appreciate you coming on, man, because most people wouldn't. And I think it's big of you to do that. We talked about coming on the show.
I agree with that sentiment. I will give Nick Calandra a very small amount of props for actually showing up on Side Scrollers. I will do that. Just like I gave the props to Director X, I'm going to do the same for Nick Calandra. Shout out to Smash JT. I see you, brother.
I mean, just even this weekend, we talked about getting you on the show with Smash because you and Smash been going back and forth. And I think it's important.
Hey, Smash JT, have you guys been going back and forth? I didn't notice.
That we actually show people that you can actually have a conversation. So I appreciate you coming on to have a conversation. So you have been, you're very critical of this idea of the Real Game Awards. Tell me why.
I'm not exactly critical of the Real Game Awards. I mean, I've been critical of Keeley's Game Awards for the exact same reasons why you're doing this. I think it's too showy, it's too corporate, and all that. I think my biggest criticism of what you're doing here is if you want it to be taken seriously and legitimized amongst the wider audience,
which we don't.
Why don't you?
Because I think that's exactly. We have no interest in being being taken seriously by journalists or
That's not what I. That's not
any member of the access media.
Sure. That's not exactly what I mean. I mean more just in bringing in a wider audience, the people that would actually want to watch it.
So here's my thing. I think that the wider audience, the regular person, the normal man who watches our show, I think there's a lot more of them than there are of the niche bubble activist who works inside the industry. And that's who our audience is. Our audience is the people who grew up playing games, saw a dramatic shift in the last few years, and are saying, what the hell's happening? What just happened to video games? Why?
Well, let me make a comment really quick. So that whole excuse about casting out a wider net, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a wider audience. That's not how this works, right? So when you're creating a product and that particular product is going to adhere to a certain audience, you already know in the back of your mind, okay, this is going to be the audience that I'm going for, and I'm going to go after them. You should be trying to maximize the audience of which you're trying to go for, not just cast the widest net possible amongst many different audiences and hope that you can get them, because what you end up doing is you end up making a game for everybody when in fact you're making it for nobody. This is something that's been proven so many different times. If you constantly try to do that, you're not going to get this supposed huge audience. It just doesn't work like that. With games get huge audiences because they are actually good games. Like, people spread the word of mouth around. And it could be a game. I'll give you a great example. It could be a game that is specifically tailored to a certain audience. And the example that I'm going to give you is From Software games, right? From Software games, Dark Souls games and whatnot were considered very niche, right? They were considered niche kind of games. They had popularity, sure. Hardcore gamers loved them. But Dark Souls, or I should say From Software games, became mainstream when word of mouth went around so much about Elden Ring that people who weren't in that niche or who weren't in that audience decided to pick it up because they heard about it. And then what ended up happening is it wasn't From Software that casted the biggest net. They didn't cast the net. From Software focused on their particular audience with Elden Ring. It just so happens that game started getting so much traction because of word of mouth that the net was cast by the players who thought it was a good game. So it's not the developer's job to cast the widest net. They're supposed to make a great game, and then if word of mouth gets around, that's something totally different. What these people want is they want you to make a game for supposedly everybody, but you're going to end up with nothing if that's what you do. 9 times out of 10, you will end up with nothing. But let's continue.
These games that we loved, why does everything need to have some sort of social agenda attached to it when that's never been a thing ever in entertainment? And up until the last few years, it's been. So a lot of people.
So I'm going to disagree with Craig here in the sense that he's saying that messaging, right, political messaging or whatever, was never a thing in entertainment, gaming, movies, TV show, otherwise, just entertainment in general. It was, but the thing is, it was a hell of a lot more subtle. It was not on your fucking face, right? Like it wasn't like directly bashing you in the fucking face with every single ideology possible, because that's what they do now, right? Back in the day, there were some movies and TV shows that absolutely had messaging, right? Family Matters had all kinds of messaging in it. I watch it all the time. I know Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had messaging in it as well. But the messaging was done very well for the story. It felt organic. It felt real, especially from those two particular shows. It felt real, and it really made you think about whatever the message was trying to be portrayed. So that's the big difference between messaging back in the day and messaging now. But to say that there was no messaging, there absolutely was messaging in a lot of different forms of entertainment. It was just done way better, way, way better.
And our audience in particular have their head spinning. And they're looking for an alternative, right? They don't like the idea of, as you said, a corporate or sanitized version of an award show that is built around industry input.
So Dub Subversion says he's talking about activist messaging in games, not like Metal Gear Solid that had it apart. Well, no, so he said entertainment. He said entertainment in general. So that's a very general net, right? And entertainment as a whole, there was messaging in games back in the day. It wasn't like so in your face. That's the difference, right? People think that the messaging of today is called activist messaging when it is to an extent, but it's no different. The problem is that they don't know how to tell a proper story. That's the issue. They don't know how to tell a proper story. and they focus on activism first, story second. Back in the day, they would make a story, and if they wanted to push a message here and there, they would figure out a way to be subtle about it and involve it in the story organically. They don't have that skill anymore. That's really the problem.